A panorama is a wide-angle view of a space. It can be horizontal, that is low and wide, or vertical, that is narrow and high. You can achieve this by stitching together several photographs. This allows you to print a large picture exceeding the physical limit imposed by the sensor size. There are some tips. First, use a large sensor. The larger your sensor, the greater your panorama. Second, be accurate. The camera rotation can cause a misalignment between the foreground and the background. If there's an object between your lens and the background, for example a tree, it'll look doubled or blurred. To avoid this, you have to rotate the camera pivoting on the lens nodal point, which, in symmetrical lenses, corresponds to the iris plane. There are two ways to do this. You can use a panoramic head. These heads are very complicated and heavy, and you need to fix them to your tripod. The heavier your camera, the heavier the head. And don't think you can carry this out on a vacation. Besides, panoramic heads must be fine-tuned to allow the lens to pivot exactly on its nodal point. You'll have to tune your head for each lens because each lens has its own nodal point. Otherwise, you can take a freehand picture. Put your left arm that holds the camera in contact with your body so your left hand will be firm, and it'll operate like a tripod head, holding the camera without warping. You can kneel down to add further stability. Above all, rotate your camera pivoting on the lens rather than on the camera body, so you'll be reasonably sure that you're pivoting on the nodal point. And be careful not to move while you're shooting. Move, stop, shoot, move again. Of course, if you work freehand, you have to use a fast shutter speed to avoid blurring, so you need a lot of light. In low light, you must put your camera on a steady support, for example, a wall. But remember to pivot the camera on the lens nodal point. Third, be bold. If you want a big panorama, make a big panorama. You have to hold the camera in portrait mode to take advantage of the higher number of pixels on the long side. Fourth, watch the exposure. Surely the sky to your left is not lighted the same way as the sky to your right. If you work in auto mode, the software will try to balance the differences and you'll get a striped sky. So you have to set the camera manually with an average exposure value. Last, the picture size. If you hold your camera in your hand, you can't move from left to right while keeping it on a perfectly straight line. So your photos will not be perfectly aligned. One will be up a little higher and the other a little lower. Blending your pictures. The stitching software necessarily cuts them to the edges. So for this reason, you have to take each picture a bit larger than you need. Overlap generously all the pictures. The software will have to find many points of contact to create a seamless panorama. Experts say you should overlap your pictures by 30%, but I do up to 50%, sometimes more. A little advice. Before you start shooting and after the last shot, take a photograph of the ground or of your hand so that when you examine your pictures, you'll know where the series begins and ends. When you return home, copy the contents of your memory card in a folder on your computer. Then create a subfolder for each panorama, for instance, Pano 1, Pano 2, Pano 3, and so on. And move into these subfolders the photographs of each series. Open the first picture of the first subfolder and adjust all developed settings, lens correction, sharpening, exposure, white balance, contrast, and so on, as usual. Then copy your developed settings and paste them on the other pictures. There's a lot of software to make panoramas. However, some of them do not read the RAW format, so you have to save your RAW pictures in other formats before blending them. If you use Photoshop, go to File, then Automate, then Photo Merge. Photo Merge allows you to stitch raw images. In the dialog that appears, choose Auto or Cylindrical. I often use both and choose the best result. Flag vignette removal and geometric distortion correction. Click Browse and add the files you want to stitch together, then click OK. The processing speed depends on the size of the files and the specs of your computer. The larger your RAM memory, the faster the processing. If you like the result, first flatten the image. Go to Layer, then Flatten Image. Then crop it to remove the white edges. And finally, save it in the preferred format.